Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today I want to talk about two distinct incidents that have kind of unfolded in the last, I'd say, week and a half or so, in two completely different areas of the world, but I think really kind of highlight maybe a growing problem that I think we could be seeing going forward. With the rapid growth of the internet since its inception and commercial availability just a few decades ago now, obviously there's been a lot of pretty insane stuff going on online, right? I mean, things that people would deem immoral, of course. And in a way, the internet's kind of like the Wild West, right? Like, everyone is supposed to be pretty much anonymous, unless, well, of course, you're on something like Facebook where you're giving every personal detail of yourself out. But people are supposed to have like this anonymity behind them when they use the internet, and it allows you to access all these great things. Information at your fingertips, things like that, but of course, with like the unmonitored, basically, growth of the internet since it's kind of come out, and with these, tools of anonymity, we've seen bad things kind of pop up. And in recent years, we've seen widespread misinformation campaigns, we've seen, outlandish things being said by all different kinds of people about different things, political topics. Pretty much anything you can really think of, people are arguing about online, and there's probably somebody doing something immoral in that community, right? But there's been two incidents that have unfolded here in the United States and also in the United Kingdom in the last, like I said, week and a half or so that have kind of shown that people really don't understand how to handle the internet, and also at the same time, people are like so scared of the bad things happening online that they're almost willing to accept losing personal rights in order to make sure that these bad things go away. Now, the first one I want to talk about is here in the United States. So in the last few years, Facebook has been basically accused of allowing all types of misinformation to spread about all kinds of different things, but of course, probably most notably, the elections and also COVID, okay? So on Facebook, basically, I feel like everyone who's ever used Facebook can understand. It's kind of like something that you log into to see, like, basically what your family members are saying and doing, right? Like, and people go on there to share their opinions and everything, right? And with all this misinformation that's been floating around in the last few years online, people have been making some absurd claims about all kinds of different things. People are spreading COVID-19 vaccine misinformation and conspiracies based on the vaccines. And of course, it's not exclusive to COVID. Vaccine denial and things like that have always been pretty kind of common, I would say, on Facebook and other social media platforms, but it's gotten a little bit more of a spotlight because of the pandemic. Now, President Joe Biden actually came out and said that platforms, including Facebook, were killing people because they were quote-unquote allowing COVID-19 misinformation on their services. And this actually is following some comments which were made, I should say, by the press secretary of the White House, Jen Psaki, I think is how you say her name, where she had essentially admitted that the Biden administration was actually going through Facebook posts and they were flagging ones that they deemed problematic for Facebook to look into because they were quote-unquote spreading misinformation. Now, it raises some problems that that's being done because obviously in the United States, the supreme law is the Constitution. And freedom of speech is something that is a constitutional guarantee, right? Now, it's starting to, almost beg the argument of whether or not this is going to end up encroaching on the First Amendment at some point, because if they're just openly admitting, yeah, we're going through Facebook posts and we're actually targeting the ones that we don't agree with and we're flagging those for Facebook to potentially take action against, that sounds a lot like the government is kind of suppressing speech. Now, I mean, of course, this is misinformation that they're supposedly targeting, but from what I've read through these sources, they have not really described what they consider misinformation besides the quote-unquote latest narratives dangerous to public health. They don't actually provide any concrete examples, like saying that, I guess vaccines have microchips or something, right? They didn't come out and do that. I have not read any of that in any of these articles that I've read about this subject, but they are apparently targeting these things. Now, the thing about this is, it's really kind of hard to, I guess, make an argument either way for me, right? Because the way that I see it, the government isn't actually, I guess, cutting people's internet wires, which obviously you don't have to just do that in order to suppress people. It's really borderline almost is the problem. It's almost in a gray area. So it's kind of really hard to describe whether or not it's actually a straight up violation of the First Amendment, but to me it definitely seems a little bit borderline that the government is monitoring people's Facebooks to see if they're spreading misinformation and also not actually describing in full detail what's considered actual information that they, I guess, deem valuable. My thing is like, if they're openly admitting this is something they're doing, I feel like there's probably more in the background that they're not telling people. And so, like, it's already real borderline at the tip of the iceberg. It's like what actually lies below what you can see, right? Now, at this point, I kind of want to pivot on to the next topic that kind of brings this concern up for me, right? Because the first one is like a privacy concern. It's like an actual, like, rights concern. Do you have the right to be wrong, basically, publicly, is what we're arguing here if you really boil it down. But over in the UK, if you guys didn't realize, there was actually a pretty important soccer match, the finals for the Euro tournament. It's basically just like the championship for all the European football/soccer teams. Well, England and Italy made it to the final, and, the English fans were, like, hyping up their team this entire time, saying, oh, it's coming home, things like that. But then they actually ended up losing to Italy in that finals game and getting second place basically in the entire tournament. Well, from my understanding, there was a couple of black players on the team that in like the penalty shootout, they missed their kicks, right? Which ended up losing them the game. And I mean, I don't really know, I guess, anything like personal about these players or like, if it was even really, because a lot of people were saying it was a bad coaching decision, but that's not really important. So they had these players that missed their kicks, and then like English fans basically took to social media and were just saying outrageous racist shit about players on their own team that were representing their country, just saying some just foul fucked up shit, going way too far over a game of soccer, right, which they didn't play in. Most of them didn't have family members or friends playing in. Granted, it's representing your country, but I think that's even more of an argument to not be a racist piece of shit on the internet. But I mean, apparently people were freaking the fuck out about this, right? And it actually ended up basically leading to a petition to be made to the English government, the United Kingdom government, to make a verified ID a requirement for opening social media accounts. So basically what this would have entailed was like, say you wanted to go and make a YouTube account, right? So you could watch my videos and subscribe and like. You would have had to have like a valid driver's license or like government issued ID in order to make that fucking account, to like prove who you are, which strips away one of the basic fundamentals and principles of the internet, which is the fact that you're anonymous, right? Which is the fact that you are not able to just be readily available to be known, right? Which is something weird because like social media is on the rise and everything, and you tell all these details about yourself, but online you're supposed to be anonymous, right? Basically, not only would this have prevented people who don't have IDs that are valid from getting fucking internet access and being able to really use the internet, it literally also would provide a way to just suppress free speech and free expression online. Because, I mean, if you think about it, right, like if you live in a country where like you have to show your fucking ID to the government, they're like, oh, hey, you're here, first name, last name, you live at 123 Anywhere Street in, little town, wherever, right? Everything you fucking do online comes back to that person, right? So like if you say some shit against the government, you're like, yeah, fuck the government, right? They basically know it's you. And like they could come after you, hypothetically, which provides fear, right? Because who the fuck wants, government mercenaries kicking the door in to arrest them because they were critical of the regime? And don't pretend that just because it's in like the UK or the United States that shit like that's impossible, right? Because that mindset is what leads to these situations in the first place. So when it comes down to it, right, like this actually got almost 700,000 fucking signatures. It only needed 100,000. Once you get like 100k signatures on a petition, it is going to be considered by Parliament for a debate, which means that the government will basically take fucking action on your petition, right? So it got almost 7 times the necessary amount. And the government ended up responding. They said that, quote, the online safety legislation will address anonymous harmful activity. User ID verification for social media could disproportionately impact vulnerable users and interfere with freedom of expression. So even the own government, who like could have benefited from this in all reality if they really wanted to, was like, no, this is fucking stupid. We're not doing this. So it's getting to this point that like the lunacy that we see online sometimes is actually getting to the point with people where they're willing to sacrifice their own personal rights just to be quote unquote comfortable online. To not have to see shit you disagree with or that you don't like or that offends you, right? Sure, people shouldn't be going on Facebook and spreading fucking misinformation and saying outlandish things that aren't verifiable, that don't have real facts behind them, but they still have rights, you know what I'm saying? You can't teeter-totter on whether or not, the government can kinda dip into the pot, because if you fucking start playing the, 6 inches game where you're trying to be right away from it, you know what I'm saying? Like, real fucking borderline, right at the edge, all you're really asking to do at that point is just get your fucking boundaries overstepped. Like, you gotta stand up against shit like this. Anyways, with all that being said though, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel, follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @subtooptimus, make sure to check out Shop Opti down below, and until my next video guys, this is Optimus, well, just not a big fan of these, and signing out.